Do you ever feel like everyone else is ahead in your academic career, publishing papers, getting grants, building their reputation, and you're just stuck? If that's you, you're not alone. When I finished fellowship and my master's, I had zero publications, none. And I had no prospects of becoming a researcher. And that meant 3 years of training with nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, my peers were publishing, they were presenting at conferences, they were securing grants. I felt like I was falling further behind. That wasn't the end of story. It took me another 3 years, yes, 3 more years, before I finally got my first grant. So that's 6 years of feeling like I was stuck while everyone else was sprinting ahead. But here's what I've learned along the way. Feeling behind doesn't mean you're failing. It just means that you're on a different timeline. In this video, I'm going to share the mindset shifts, hard truths, and actionable steps that help me turn things around. If you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or you feel like you're running out of time, this is for you. Number one, the truth about academic timelines. Let's talk about timelines in academia because they are actually much slower than we think. Success in academia rarely happens overnight. In fact, most people don't hit their stride until they've been in the field for years, even decades. And here's the thing, what does success even mean? Unlike a race, there's no clear finish line in academia. There's no single final goal where you can declare, there you go, I've made it, and now I'm done. It's really a continuous journey. You publish one paper, and there's another question to explore. You get one grant, and then you're applying for the next one. Progress in academia is incremental. It's about building a body of work over time, not reaching one grand milestone. It's a lot like medicine. In medicine, there's no true final moment when you've completed all of your work. The goal is to continuously provide excellent patient care, adapting as new knowledge and challenges arise. So in academia, the goal isn't to finish, it's to contribute, learn, and grow throughout your career. So if you're feeling you're behind, remind yourself, this is a long game. Success is less about how fast you get there and more about staying consistent, engaged, and committed to making a meaningful impact over time. And your timeline is yours. Trust the process and keep moving forward. Number two, don't compare your chapter 1 with someone else's chapter 10. Comparison is one of the quickest ways to feel like you're falling behind. It's so easy to look at somebody else's accomplishment and think, why am I not there yet? But here's the truth. You might be comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. You have to take academic age into account. For example, I did not go to medical school in the US. And when I started residency in the US, it was a clinical program. So I had zero research experience. Meanwhile, some of my peers have been publishing papers during their undergraduate years, building strong foundations in research long before I even started. So maybe that professor with a dozen of grants has been developing their research skills since undergraduate while you started later. That doesn't mean that you're less capable. It means that you are at a different stage. Focus on your growth and progress. Everybody's journey is different, and that's okay. Number three, we are all on different life paths. So earlier we were talking about academic timeline, but we also have our own life story. Let me share a quick story. I have two kids, one 9 years old, one 11 years old. And when I told that to a renal fellow, he told me, wow, you won the life game. That's because they were just starting their first child and still struggling with sleep deprivation. But what they did not see was me having kids during internship and fellowship, falling asleep in the middle of conversation with my attending, pumping between ICU rounds, and feeling like the worst trainee in my class. So we are all on different life paths, and those paths come with trade-offs. So don't judge your journey based on someone else's circumstances. Number four, comparison isn't always bad. Now let's flip the script on comparison. Not all comparison is negative. Sometimes it's about perspective. Many emotions are opposite of the spectrum. The feeling you get when you see somebody achieving, it could create some jealousy or envy. But the opposite spectrum of the same emotion is inspiration. What if you could flip the switch? Seeing somebody else succeed might trigger some jealousy, but what if you use it as inspiration? If they have done it, that means it's possible for you as well. So instead of thinking, why them, you can ask, what steps did they take? How can I adapt that to my own situation? Number five, start from where you are. Here's the most important advice. Start from where you are. This is the beginning of any meaningful change. Let me explain by introducing something called the emotional cycle of change. You may have even experienced this without even realizing it. The first stage is uninformed optimism. This is where most people begin when they're excited about something new. They're full of energy. They think, oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to publish this paper. And here's the catch. This optimism comes from not knowing what challenges lie ahead. Then now, the next stage you can see here starts on a high emotional scale because everything feels possible. But if you don't actually start, you stay stuck here, dreaming and planning without making real progress. And you won't know what's missing or what you need to do to improve unless you take action. Now, let's say you do start. You quickly move to stage 2, informed pessimism. And this is where reality hits. You realize that your research project idea is not as strong as you think, or you discover how challenging it is to actually collect data or analyze data. And so at this stage, your emotional stage starts dipping here, and it's tempting to think this is too hard. Maybe I'm not ready. If you keep going, you'll hit stage 3, the valley of despair. And this is the lowest point, and it's where most people quit. They will start thinking, why did I even start? This is never going to work. But here's the thing, you have to move this stage to move forward. If you keep pushing, you enter stage 4, informed optimism. Here, you've adapted, learned from the challenges, and started seeing results. Things start to click and your confidence grows. And finally, you reach stage 5, success and fulfillment. And this is where the effort pays off. You're publishing that paper, or maybe landing that grant, or achieving the goal you've been working toward. But to even begin this process, you have to start. And yes, the valley of despair is hard, but the only way to move through the cycle is by first taking the first step, even if it's messy. For example, when I first wrote my first grant, I thought the idea was great. But once I started, I got feedback, I realized it just wasn't strong enough. I could only learn that by doing the work. Taking action gave me clarity about what I needed to improve to speak to more people. So if you're sitting in this uninformed optimism right now, excited about your idea but scared to start, just do it. Start from where you are. It won't be perfect, but that's okay. Remember, you have to move through these stages to reach success. And staying stuck at the top, dreaming about how great it could be, won't get you anywhere. And starting is the only way to push through the emotional cycle of change and get to the other side. I know conducting a research project is an overwhelming process, so I made the idea to paper blueprint for you. This blueprint takes you through a 7-step process from the idea generation phase to the paper submission phase. Plus, you get my free 5-day email course, Jumpstart Your Academic Writing. We will cover mindset, key writing tips, how do you beat writer's block, and more. So click on the link in the description below. Number 6, self-audit your skills. Be honest with yourself. What are your skills? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Maybe you're great at generating ideas, but struggling with organizing them. Maybe your writing needs work, or perhaps designing studies feel overwhelming. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to have a clear picture of where you are now and where you want to go. And think of it like mapping out a journey. If you don't know your starting point, how can you plan the best route to your destination? Identifying your skills and gaps is the first step in creating that map. And so let's break it down a little. Number 1, start with your strengths. What are you naturally good at? Maybe you're great at networking, which makes collaboration easier, or you're meticulous with data analysis. Lean into those strengths to your advantage as you tackle your challenges. The second one, acknowledge your weaknesses. Weaknesses aren't failures, they are areas for growth. For example, if writing is a struggle, consider joining a writing group or seek mentorship or coaching. If you're unsure about study design, there are online courses or workshops that can help. The third point, seek feedback. Sometimes we can't see our own blind spot. Ask a trusted mentor, peer, or colleague to review your work or give you honest input. They might point out areas you have not even considered. And then the fourth step, create a plan to close the gap. Once you've identified the weaknesses, don't try to tackle everything at once. Focus on maybe one gap at a time. Perhaps it's improving your scientific writing or learning how to use statistical software. Take it step by step. And remember, a self-audit isn't about criticizing yourself. It's about understanding your current abilities so you can build a stronger foundation. You're not really competing with anyone else. You're working on being a better version of yourself. And once you know where you stand, you will be better equipped to make meaningful action and move forward. Number 7, identify your barriers. The next step is figuring out what's holding you back. What's standing between you and your goals? These barriers might not be obvious at first, so it's important to take a step back and honestly evaluate what's keeping you stuck. Here are some common barriers and how to start addressing them. The first one, lack of mentorship. Not having a mentor can feel isolating. But mentorship doesn't have to come from one person. Build a board of mentors by seeking guidance from multiple people who can offer expertise in different areas: writing, research design, or career navigation. The action step: reach out to people whose work you admire. You can start with specific question or requesting for advice, and then build the relationship gradually from there. Another issue: too many commitments. Are you saying yes to everything? Overcommitment is a barrier many academics face. It feels good to be involved, but spreading yourself too thin means you'll struggle to prioritize the work that truly matters. And so, what you need to do: review your current obligations and ask yourself, does this align with my long term goals? If not, it might be time to delegate, renegotiate deadlines, or maybe step back from less impactful commitments. The next barrier: structural barriers. These might include things like limited institutional resources, administrative hurdles, or a heavy clinical workload. While these can feel out of your control, there are often small ways to navigate around them. Speak to your department head, you collaborate with others to share resources, or explore external partnerships. The next barrier: lack of time. Time is one of the most common barriers, but often it's not about having more time. It's about using the time wisely. Here, do a time audit. Look at how you're spending your day. Are there low value tasks that could be eliminated or delegated? Can you block out focused work sessions for your most important tasks? Identifying your barriers is empowering because it gives you clarity. And once you know what's standing in your way, you can create a plan to address it. And the key is not to feel defeated by your barriers, but to approach them as challenges to overcome one step at a time. You do not have to tackle everything at once. Start with the biggest barrier that's holding you back, or you can go to another path, which is break down the smallest barrier. Each barrier you bring down brings you closer to your goals. Number 8, face the truth. This one's tough, but it's absolutely essential. Growth starts with honesty, and that means asking yourself the hard question. If your project isn't working, admit it. If you've been avoiding writing because it's overwhelming, acknowledge that too. You can't fix what you're not willing to confront. And so here's what I mean. Do I really not have the time, or am I squandering it? Be honest about how you're spending your day. Are you truly too busy, or are you avoiding the hard tasks by filling your time with less meaningful ones? Maybe it's excessive email checking, scrolling social media, or saying yes to things that don't align with your goals. Facing the truth isn't about blaming yourself, it's about gaining clarity. Once you name the real issue, you can take action to fix it. Number 9, ask yourself, is this the goal you really want? This is a question we don't ask ourselves often enough. Are you pursuing this goal because it genuinely excites you? Or are you holding on because you've invested so much time and effort? And that's called the sunk cost bias. The idea that you can't quit something because of what you've already put in. But here's the truth: the past is gone. What you have wasted has wasted. What matters is whether this goal aligns with where you want to go now. Maybe you started a research project years ago, but it no longer excites you. Or maybe you're chasing a grant that feels more like an obligation than an opportunity. If it does not align with your current values or passion, it's okay to let it go. Remember, quitting something that no longer serves you isn't failure, it's just redirection. It creates space for the work that truly fulfills you. So ask yourself, if I started fresh today, would this still be the goal I choose? If the answer is no, give yourself permission to pivot. Number 10, setbacks are part of the process. In academia, rejection isn't just common, it's expected. Rejected papers, failed grants, unproductive collaborations, they're just all part of the journey. And these moments aren't a reflection of your worth or ability, they're feedback. They're opportunities to learn and grow. And think of every rejection as a data point. A rejected paper tells you what to improve. A failed grant can teach you how to better frame your research. Unproductive collaborations show you how to choose partners more wisely in future. The most successful academics aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who keep going after failure. And so when setbacks happen, and they will, use them as stepping stones, adapt, and then come back stronger. Number 11, design your ideal day and ideal week. Balance doesn't happen by accident. It's something you create intentionally. So take a moment to imagine your ideal day. What does it look like? How much time are you spending on writing, mentoring, or deep focus? What about time with your family or doing something for yourself? And now think something bigger. What would an ideal week look like? Maybe you would dedicate Mondays to writing, reserve Tuesdays for meetings, and then Fridays for creative thinking or tackling long-term projects. And once you have thought through it, the next step is to structure the real schedule to reflect those priorities. It may not be perfect, and you might not be able to stick to it all the time, but even small changes can make a huge difference. For example, you might decide to block off 2 uninterrupted hours every morning for your most important work. Or you might protect your evenings as family time, no matter what. The key is to align your schedule with what truly matters to you. Number 12, do one thing to move forward and remove one thing that pushes you backwards. Progress isn't just about doing more, it's about doing the right things. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today to move closer to my goal? It does not have to be big. It could be as simple as writing a paragraph, analyzing one piece of the data, or reaching out to a mentor. Small steps add up over time. But equally important is subtraction. What's one thing you can remove today that's distracting to you? Maybe it's saying no to a meeting that does not align with your priorities, or limiting time on social media. So, in other words, simplify your focus, add one step forward, and subtract one that goes backwards. That combination can accelerate your progress in ways you did not expect. Number 13, if you don't quit, you can't fail. Success in academia isn't about being the smartest or the most talented, it's about persistence. The only way to fail is to quit. Every successful researcher has faced rejections, setbacks, and moments of doubt. What sets them apart isn't that they avoided these, but is that they kept showing up, learning, and improving despite them. Think of your career as a long game. Even if progress feels slow, as long as you're moving forward, you're winning. Show up for yourself every day, no matter how small the steps may feel. Because if you don't quit, you will eventually get there. Number 14, blowing up isn't sustainable. Focus on consistent growth. So it's easy to fall into this trap of blowing up, I'm making my big break, pushing yourself into overdrive for a short-term burst of productivity. And maybe you want to work through the nights to finish a paper or cram a week's worth into the weekend. It feels exciting in the moment, but it's not sustainable. Success comes from consistent, steady effort. And whether that's a new skill, a completed draft, or a deeper understanding of your field. Over time, those small, consistent actions add up to something extraordinary. So instead of chasing short bursts of productivity, build on building habits that you can sustain over the long term. If you're feeling behind, I hope this gave you some clarity and encouragement. You're not alone, and you're not as far behind as you think. Start from where you are, focus on what matters, and keep going. And let's keep building together.